Captain Jai-Ho Park stood at the large window of Olympus Base, looking out at the red Martian landscape. The massive shape of Olympus Mons rose in the distance, its peak hidden in the thin, dusty atmosphere. After 15 years of planning and a 9-month journey through space, they had finally done it. The first permanent human settlement on Mars was now a reality. He turned away from the window and walked through the main corridor of the base. The walls were plain white, but the Korean and international flags added spots of color. The sound of his boots echoed as he made his way to the medical bay for his weekly checkup. Dr. Hae-Yun Lee was waiting for him. She wore the standard blue medical uniform with her long black hair tied back neatly. "Good morning, Captain," she said, looking up from her computer screen. "How are you feeling today?" "The same as always," Jai-Ho replied, sitting down on the examination table. "A little tired, but who isn't?" The lower gravity of Mars still felt strange after 3 months on the surface. Sometimes he would reach for something and move too quickly, or step too hard while walking. Hae-Yun checked his blood pressure and heart rate. "Your readings are good," she said, "but you need more rest. Leading 50 people on another planet isn't easy." Jai-Ho smiled slightly. Hae-Yun always worried about everyone's health. It was what made her such a good doctor. "I'll rest when we finish setting up the greenhouse, the hydroponic systems." A loud alarm suddenly cut through their conversation. Red lights began flashing in the corridor outside. Jai-Ho jumped up and rushed to the nearest computer terminal, Hae-Yun right behind him. "Report," he commanded, pressing the communication button. The worried face of engineer Do-Hyun Kang appeared on the screen. "Captain, we're picking up a strange signal from underground," Do-Hyun said. His eyes were wide with excitement. "It's about 2 kilometers below the surface, near the base of Olympus Mons. We've never seen anything like it." Jai-Ho felt his heart beat faster. They had come to Mars to build a settlement and study the planet. Finding something unexpected wasn't part of the plan. "What kind of signal?" he asked. "It's regular. Too regular to be natural," Do-Hyun explained. "It repeats every 47 seconds exactly. The pattern is complex, almost like it's trying to communicate something." Hae-Yun touched Jai-Ho's arm gently. "It could be interference from our own equipment," she suggested. "We should check everything first." Jai-Ho nodded. "Do-Hyun, run a full diagnostic on all our systems. Hae-Yun, please check if this signal could affect our medical equipment. I'll inform Earth about what we found, but let's be sure before we cause any excitement." As he walked quickly to the communication center, Jai-Ho's mind raced with possibilities. If this signal wasn't coming from their equipment, what could it be? Natural phenomena didn't create regular patterns like this. And if it wasn't natural? He shook his head. Best not to jump to conclusions. They needed facts first. But he couldn't help feeling that everything was about to change. They had come to Mars to start humanity's next chapter in space. Now it seemed Mars itself had something to tell them. Looking out another window at the red landscape, Jai-Ho watched a dust devil spin across the plain. Somewhere under that rusty soil, something was sending a signal. Whatever it was, they would find it. That's what explorers did. That's why they had come so far from Earth. He straightened his uniform and entered the communication center. Time to tell Earth about their discovery. He just hoped they were ready for what they might find. Dr. Ta-Won Kim adjusted his helmet as he stepped out onto the Martian surface. The morning sun cast long shadows across the red landscape. As the base's lead geologist, he had studied Mars for 20 years, but being here was different from looking at pictures on Earth. He checked his oxygen levels and started walking toward the drilling site. Engineer Do-Hyun Kang had spent the last week setting up the drilling equipment. They needed to find out what was sending that strange signal from underground. "The ground is different here," Ta-Won said into his radio as he knelt to examine the soil. "The mineral composition doesn't match our surveys." Do-Hyun looked up from the drilling controls. "Different how?" "These patterns." Ta-Won picked up a rock and turned it over in his gloved hands. "They look like watermarks. Recent watermarks. That's impossible, Do-hyun replied. Mars hasn't had surface water for millions of years. Tae-won stood up, holding the rock. I know what I'm seeing. These marks couldn't be more than a few thousand years old. The drill hummed to life behind them. Do-hyun had designed it specially for Mars, with advanced sensors and cooling systems. We're ready to start, he said. The first drill will go down 500 meters. They watched as the drill bit disappeared into the red soil. Everything worked perfectly for the first hour. Then the drill's sensors started showing strange readings. The temperature is dropping, Do-hyun said, frowning at his screen. That's not normal. It should be getting warmer as we go deeper. Suddenly, the drill stopped. Do-hyun tried to restart it, but nothing happened. The control panel went dark. What's wrong? Tae-won asked, moving closer to look at the dead equipment. I don't know. Everything just died. Do-hyun opened the control panel. The power cells are fine, but nothing's working. Their radios crackled. This is Captain Park. How's the drilling going? Tae-won explained about the strange minerals and the drill failure. There was a long pause before the captain responded. Come back to base, Jae-ho ordered. We need to talk. Dr. Lee found something interesting in the signal pattern. Back inside the base, they met in the main conference room. Hae-yeon Lee stood next to a large screen showing wave patterns. The signal isn't random, she explained. It changes when we try to dig, like it's responding to us. That's not possible, Do-hyun said, but he sounded uncertain. It has to be a coincidence. 3 times isn't a coincidence, Hae-yeon replied. Every time we start to drill, the signal changes frequency. Then our equipment fails. Captain Park looked at each of them. So we have recent watermarks, changing signals, and failing equipment. Something is happening under the surface of Mars, and we need to find out what it is. But how? Do-hyun asked. We can't dig without equipment. Tae-won held up the rock he had found. Maybe we don't need to dig. These watermarks form patterns. If we follow them, they might lead us to a natural entrance. Jae-ho nodded slowly. Do it. Map those patterns. But be careful. Mars is trying to tell us something, but we don't know if we're going to like the message. As they left the conference room, Tae-won looked at the rock in his hand. In all his years studying Mars, he had never expected this. The red planet had been hiding secrets, and now it seemed ready to share them. He just hoped they were ready for what they might find. Dr. Sun Mi-choi walked carefully along the narrow cave passage, her helmet light illuminating the smooth walls. After following the watermarks for 3 days, they had found this natural tunnel leading down into Mars. As the team's xenorchaeologist, she had studied possible signs of life on other planets, but she had never expected to find anything like this. Look at these walls, she said into her radio. They're too smooth to be natural. Her gloved hand touched the surface. It felt almost like polished glass. Behind her, Captain Park moved his light across the ceiling. How far down are we? About 1 kilometer, Tae-won answered, checking his instruments. The signal is getting stronger. We're going the right way. They continued walking down the sloping tunnel. The path curved gently, always heading deeper into the planet. After another hour, they entered a large cave. Sunmi stopped suddenly. Her light had caught something on the far wall. There, she whispered. Do you see it? The others raised their lights. On the wall were markings, clear, precise shapes arranged in patterns. They weren't random scratches or natural formations. They were too perfect. Are those numbers? Hae-yeon asked, moving closer. Sunmi nodded slowly. Not like our numbers, but yes, they're mathematical symbols. Her heart was beating fast. After 15 years of studying possible alien writing, she was finally seeing the real thing. This is artificial. Someone made this. How old is it? Captain Park asked quietly. Tae-won scanned the wall with his instruments. The surface is covered with a thin layer of crystal growth. Based on the formation rate, he paused, checking his calculations. At least 10,000 years old, maybe much older. They followed the wall, finding more symbols. The patterns became more complex, filling entire sections of the cave. Sunmei took pictures of everything, her mind racing as she tried to understand what she was seeing. It's not just numbers, she said after a while. It's a language. But it's based on mathematical principles, like they used math to communicate. Hei-yun pointed to a section of the wall that looked different. What about this part? They all moved closer. In the center of the wall was a circular design. It wasn't just carved into the rock. It seemed to go deeper, like a door. Do-hyun examined the edge of the circle with his scanner. There's a chamber behind this wall. A big one. Can we open it? Captain Park asked. Maybe. Do-hyun studied the symbols around the circle. These patterns look like they might be instructions, but we need to understand them first. Sunmi took more pictures. I can work on translating them. The mathematical base will help. Numbers are universal. They mean the same thing everywhere. Captain Park looked at each member of his team. Whatever we find in that chamber will change everything we know about Mars. About human history. Are we ready for that? We have to be. Sunmi said firmly. Someone left this here for a reason. They wanted it to be found. As they prepared to return to the base, Sunmi looked back at the symbols one last time. In all her studies of possible alien writing, she had never imagined her first encounter would be on Mars. Just a few months into their mission, the symbols seemed to watch them as they left, waiting to share their secrets. Mars had been hiding this message for thousands of years. Now it was finally time for someone to read it. Security Chief Yoon-gai Hwang stood guard outside the cave entrance, watching the Martian sunrise. 2 weeks had passed since they found the underground chamber. During that time, Dr. Sunmi had worked day and night to understand the mathematical language on the walls. His radio crackled. Chief Hwang, please come down. Dr. Sunmi says she's made progress. Yoon-gai entered the tunnel, walking the now familiar path to the chamber. Inside, the team had set up lights and computers. Sunmi sat at her workstation, her eyes bright with excitement despite her obvious tiredness. I figured it out, she said as everyone gathered around. The symbols are instructions. They tell us how to activate something inside the chamber. Captain Park leaned forward. What kind of something? Technology, Sunmi replied. The mathematics describes energy flows and mechanical systems. Whatever is behind that wall, it's still working after thousands of years. Yoon-gai frowned. Is it dangerous? We don't know, Hei-yun said. That's the problem. We can't predict what will happen when we activate ancient technology. Do-hyun studied the circular door. Earth wants us to proceed. The potential benefits are too great to ignore. Earth isn't here, Yoon-gai pointed out. We are. If something goes wrong, we'll face the consequences. Captain Park looked at each team member. We need to decide. Do we activate the system or wait for more research? Sunmi stood up. The instructions are clear. They left this for someone to find. They'd wanted us to use it. Or they sealed it away for a reason, Yoon-gai countered. Hei-yun touched the wall gently. Look at how carefully they made these instructions. This wasn't meant to keep people out. It was meant to guide them. I agree, Do-hyun said. The mathematical language, the universal principles. They wanted anyone with enough knowledge to understand this. Captain Park walked to the circular door. Sunmi explained the activation sequence. We need to input mathematical constants, she said, pointing to different symbols. Pi, the speed of light, the gravitational constant. It's like a test. We have to prove we understand basic physics. Why? Yoon-gai asked. To show we're advanced enough to handle what's inside, Ta-won suggested. It makes sense. You wouldn't give advanced technology to someone who doesn't understand basic science. Captain Park nodded slowly. Sunmi, start the sequence. Everyone else, stay alert. If anything seems wrong, we stop immediately. Sunmei began pressing specific points on the wall, following the mathematical pattern. The symbols started to glow faintly. A low hum filled the chamber. Energy readings are increasing, Du Hyun reported, watching his instruments. But they're stable. Whatever this is, it's working perfectly. The circular door began to move. It didn't slide or swing. Instead, it seemed to dissolve, revealing a dark passage beyond. The humming grew louder. "Ready?" Captain Park asked, looking at his team. They nodded. Together, they stepped through the doorway, into whatever the ancient builders of this place had left for them to find. The answers to Mars' past, and perhaps humanity's future, waited in the darkness ahead. Engineer Jae-yun Song walked through the vast underground facility, her footsteps echoing in the ancient halls. The team had spent 3 days exploring this place, and they still hadn't seen all of it. The facility stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with machinery that somehow still worked after thousands of years. "These power systems are amazing," she said, examining a glowing panel. "They're using principles we barely understand. Look at how the energy flows through these circuits." Do Hyun checked his readings. "The efficiency is beyond anything we have on Earth. No heat waste, no energy loss. It's perfect." They had found rooms full of machines that seemed to control Mars's environment. Maps showed a network of similar facilities all around the planet, all connected to this central hub. "I think I understand how it works," Jae-yun said, her hands moving over the control surfaces. Something about the technology felt familiar to her, as if it made sense in a way she couldn't explain. They built this to change the planet, to make it livable again. Captain Park looked up from his tablet. "Again." "Yes." Jae-yun pointed to displays showing Mars' history. "Mars was like Earth once. These machines could control the weather, the atmosphere, even the planet's magnetic field. But something happened. They had to shut it all down." Hyun studied the medical data they had found. They were planning for the future. "Everything here is designed to last, to wait for someone to find it." "But why?" Yoon-gae asked. He still kept his hand near his weapon, unsure about all this ancient technology. Sunmai emerged from a room filled with data storage devices. "I found records. The builders knew their civilization was ending. Instead of letting everything die, they left behind the tools to bring Mars back to life." Jae-yun touched another panel, and a huge hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed Mars as it once was: blue oceans, white clouds, green valleys. Then the image changed to show what the planet could be again. "We can restore it," she said quietly. "That's what all this is for. They left us everything we need." "Can you operate it?" Captain Park asked. Jae-yun nodded slowly. "I think so. The controls respond to me. It's like they designed it to be simple once you understand the basic principles." "Earth needs to know about this," Du Hyun said. "This technology could solve our energy problems, our climate issues." "Not just Earth," Ta-won added. "This could make Mars livable again, a second home for humanity." Captain Park looked at his team. "Jae-yun, learn everything you can about these systems. Hae-yun, study the medical records. Sunmei, keep translating the data. The rest of you, map this facility. We need to understand everything before we make any decisions." As the others left to their tasks, Jae-yun stayed at the control panel. The ancient machines hummed around her, ready to wake up after their long sleep. She felt the weight of what they had found. This wasn't just about exploring Mars anymore. They had found the keys to changing two worlds. She looked at the hologram of Mars as it could be, its surface transformed from red desert to living world. The builders had waited thousands of years for someone to find this place. Now that moment had come, and everything would change. Dr. Min-ho Cho sat at his workstation in the ancient facility, studying the patterns in the data. As the team's theoretical physicist, he had spent the last week trying to understand the deeper meaning behind the Martian technology. Outside, a massive dust storm was approaching the base. The storm will reach us in 6 hours, Captain Park announced, entering the main control room. It will cut off our communication with Earth for at least 3 days. Minho looked up from his screens. That might be good. Earth governments are fighting over who should control this place. We need time to understand what we found. He was right. Since they had reported their discovery, Earth had been in chaos. Every nation wanted access to the ancient technology. Private companies were already sending ships to Mars. The first ones would arrive in 4 months. Jai-yun, how much have you learned about the systems? Captain Park asked. Jai-yun didn't look away from her control panel. More than we thought possible. The Martians didn't just leave behind technology. They left a message. Minho found it hidden in the data patterns. Minho nodded. The patterns repeat in a specific way. At first, I thought it was just part of how the machines work. But it's more than that. It's a warning. What kind of warning? Hei-yun asked, moving closer. The Martians knew their civilization was ending, Minho explained. But they didn't just die out. They made a choice. They used these machines to put their entire world to sleep. Do-hyun frowned. To sleep. Why? Because something was coming, Minho said. Something they couldn't stop. But they could hide. They transformed their planet into a desert on purpose, hiding everything underground, including themselves. The room went quiet. Captain Park spoke first. Are you saying there are Martians here? Still alive? In suspended animation, yes. Deep beneath the surface. The machines kept them safe, waiting for the right time to wake up. Yoon-gai stepped forward. How many? Millions, Minho answered. In facilities like this all around the planet. But that's not all. The thing they were hiding from. The data suggests it's coming back. That's why the signal activated now. The machines knew it was time. Suddenly, the facility's alarms started ringing. Outside, the dust storm was moving faster than expected. Red sand whipped past the entrance, driven by fierce winds. We need to make a decision, Captain Park said. Earth wants us to shut everything down until they can send more people. But if Minho is right, we don't have time to wait. Jai-yun touched the main control panel. The Martians trusted that whoever found this place would make the right choice. They left everything we need to wake them up, to bring their world back to life. And if Earth doesn't agree? Yoon-gai asked. Earth won't be able to contact us during the storm, Hei-yun pointed out. Whatever we decide, we need to decide now. The storm grew stronger outside. Soon they would be cut off from Earth completely. Minho looked at the data patterns again, at the warning hidden in the numbers. The Martians had waited thousands of years for this moment. Now everything depended on what they chose to do next. The dust storm raged outside as Captain Jeho Park gathered his team in the main chamber of the Martian facility. Their last communication with Earth had ended an hour ago. Now they were alone with the biggest decision humanity had ever faced. Tell us again what will happen if we activate the system, he said to Jai-yun. She stood before the main control panel, its lights casting a soft blue glow on her face. The machines will start rebuilding Mars' atmosphere and magnetic field. The process will take about 5 years. When it's done, Mars will be like Earth, with oceans, air we can breathe, and a normal temperature. And the Martians? Yoon-gai asked. They'll wake up slowly, in small groups, Jai-yun explained. The machines will make sure they're healthy first. They left detailed instructions about how to help them. Hei-yun spoke next. I've studied their medical records. Their biology is similar to ours. They could live alongside humans without any problems. But what about the threat they were hiding from? Do-hyun asked. If we wake them up, won't it find them? Minho stepped forward with his data tablet. That's what I've been trying to understand. The Martians detected something coming from deep space, something that destroys civilizations, but they also found its weakness. What weakness? Captain Park asked. It can only detect active, advanced civilizations, Minho said. That's why the Martians hid. They turned their planet into a desert, and went to sleep. But they also developed a way to fight back. They just needed help from another civilization. From us. Taiwan looked worried. If we do this, Earth will be angry. They wanted to study everything first, to control how the technology is used. Earth doesn't understand how little time we have. Sunmai said. I finished translating the last warning message. The threat is returning. That's why the signal activated now. We have maybe 1 year before it arrives. Captain Park walked to the window, watching the red storm outside. So we have 3 choices. We can wait for Earth's permission and risk the threat arriving first. We can leave everything as it is and keep Mars a secret. Or we can wake up the Martians and help them fight what's coming. Fighting might endanger Earth, Yoongae pointed out. Earth is already in danger, Minho replied. The Martians detected the threat heading toward our solar system. It will find Earth eventually, whether we help the Martians or not. Hae-yun touched Captain Park's shoulder gently. The Martians chose to trust whoever found them. They're offering to share their world with us, to fight alongside us. That trust has to mean something. Jae-yun's hands moved over the control panel. The activation sequence is ready. We just need to decide. Captain Park looked at each member of his team. They had come to Mars to explore, to learn, to establish humanity's first home on another planet. Instead, they had found themselves at a turning point in the history of 2 civilizations. The storm grew stronger outside, but inside the ancient facility, everything was quiet. 8 humans stood in a place built by another species thousands of years ago, holding the future of 2 worlds in their hands. We need to vote, Captain Park said finally. Whatever we decide together. The vote was unanimous. As the dust storm reached its peak outside, Captain Park gave the order. Jae-yun took a deep breath and pressed her hands against the control panel, starting the activation sequence. The ancient machines came to life around them. Deep beneath the surface, systems that had waited thousands of years began to work again. The facility's lights grew brighter, and a low hum filled the air. It's starting, Minho said, watching his instruments. The magnetic field generators are powering up. They're working perfectly. On their screens, they could see other facilities around Mars waking up. One by one, the network of machines began working together, following the plan their builders had created so long ago. Look at the atmosphere readings, Taiwan said excitedly. The machines are already releasing oxygen and water vapor. The transformation has begun. Hae-yun monitored the medical systems. The first group of suspension chambers is starting to warm up. 20 Martians will wake up in about 6 hours. They'll be able to help us wake the others. The storm outside grew quiet suddenly. Through the facility's windows, they could see the sky changing color. It was becoming slightly blue instead of red. What do we tell Earth when communications come back? Yoongae asked. The truth, Captain Park replied. We tell them everything. About the threat coming toward our solar system. About the Martians who trusted us to find them. About how we'll need to work together to survive what's coming. Sunlei looked up from her translations. The Martians believed that different civilizations working together would be stronger than one alone. That's why they waited for someone else to find them. They wanted allies, not just survivors. Hours passed as they watched Mars begin to change. The first drops of rain fell outside. The first rain on Mars in thousands of years. Inside one of the medical chambers, monitors showed the first group of Martians beginning to wake up. Their vital signs are strong, Hae-yun reported. They're going to be fine. Jae-yun stayed at the control panel, making sure every system worked correctly. The transformation is happening faster than we expected. At this rate, Mars will be habitable in 3 years, not 5. Do-hyun checked the long-range sensors. I'm picking up signals from Europa. They're similar to what we found here. There might be more allies out there. Captain Park stood at the window, watching the rain fall on Mars. Earth would have questions, demands, and concerns, but none of that mattered now. They had made their choice. Two civilizations would face the future together, on a Mars that was coming back to life. Captain Hayden called softly. "They're waking up." The team gathered around the medical chamber. Inside, the first Martian opened its eyes, seeing its changed world and its new allies for the first time. Outside, the rain continued to fall on the red planet as it slowly turned green again. The next chapter in the story of two worlds was about to begin.